Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Journeys with Jack. I really appreciate you tuning in. Today, I've got a great one for you. One of the most famous cities in England, probably the second most after London, Liverpool. I call this a day in the life. It's actually 2 days, but hey, man, I had to try to work the Beatles song in somehow. So, here's what happened. My buddy Emmett Copeland and I were heading over to England to go visit a church in Newcastle, the Asian Christian church. We were going on a mission trip up there. And a hurricane was brewing and struck Florida, closed down the airport in Orlando, and so we had to scramble for flights. And a friend of mine helped us out a lot, my friend Sam Oliver, who knows all things about how to get a good flight. And so, anyway, in a big scramble, we wound up on Aer Lingus flying in to Manchester. Well, it did the trick, but I cannot recommend Aer Lingus. It was dirty. The pillows were dirty. Everything seemed to be just not so good, not up to snuff. But it got us there, so try a different airline next time. But once in Manchester, we wound up taking a train over to Liverpool. And we figured we'd get a car from Liverpool and drive up to Newcastle. So a bit of a circuitous route, but hey, we were so close, we decided we'd go see some Beatles stuff. And that we did. So you can get on a train from the Manchester airport. It's only about $20, and it takes you right up to Lime Street Station. Now, I tell you how long it takes, except for both Emmett and I fell asleep on the train, so I don't know how many stops it really makes. I guess it took about 45 minutes, maybe 30. I don't know. We were jet lagged. We woke up, and we got a taxi for about £8, which is about $10, the exchange rate being about $1.25 at the time when we went in October of 2024. We got to our hotel and met a very nice young lady who was a wealth of information. She helped us out tremendously. She was the receptionist, concierge, etc. So she told us to take the 10A bus down to the city center, and from there we could get to the Beatles Story Museum. We did just as she said, and we're glad we did. That museum is the bomb. It traces the Beatles from their rise from relative obscurity and on up to when John Lennon met Paul McCartney and things really started to take off. Their time in Hamburg playing in different dives, most famously the Star Club. And then as they got more and more famous playing gigs at the Cavern Club in Liverpool, and then I guess the rest is history. So as we came out of the Beatles Story Museum, and by the way, before I leave that museum, I want to tell you, they got a deal. They have all kinds of Beatles t-shirts. Okay, well, you can get 2 for £20. And so that's what we did. So that worked out to be a pretty good deal. Emmett and I each got one. So we came out, and they had this bus and a big placard nearby called the Magical Mystery Tour. Well, she told us about it as well, and it really appealed to me because when I was 9 years old, the very first album I ever bought with my own money was this one, The Beatles, The Magical Mystery Tour. So those of you who know about the album and the film by the same name will recognize that the Magical Mystery Tour referred to a bus tour that the Beatles promoted, and they filmed going on this tour with various people throughout parts of England and putting on skits and made a movie about it. So the Magical Mystery Tour Liverpool goes to various and sundry Beatles sites such as Penny Lane, Strawberry Field, and yes, that's actually what it is. The S was later added for literary purposes with a famous song. It also takes one to the childhood homes of George Harrison, John Lennon, and Paul McCartney. A host of other sites. It was well worth it. It was about £20. We were glad we spent the money. Great fun. Well, finishing up with the mystery tour, we went over to the Cavern. Now, the Cavern was a very famous rock club in the Beatles' day, and then, for some reason or other, there was a city improvement and it was torn down. Well, thankfully, a good-hearted soul went to the effort to retain the bricks, and then they rebuilt it near as they could to the same site and as authentically as possible. Now, not only the Beatles, but also the Rolling Stones, Queen, Elton John, Oasis, big bands, all played there. So we went inside, raised a pint to John Lennon, and watched a band perform covers of Oasis. Now, I did get this souvenir at the Cavern Club. Check it out. So they had this for sale, And I bought it, and voila, now I have imitation John Lennon glasses. Cool, huh? I like it anyway. So, subsequently, we went on back on the 10A bus and stopped at the corner near the hotel and ate dinner at a Sri Lankan restaurant. Great thing about Liverpool, it's a port city. It has excellent international cuisine. We had Sri Lankan, Indian, and Ethiopian while we were there. Delicious, all of them. So we went on to bed. Next morning we got up, and this hotel being a bed and breakfast, great concept in England where you sleep in the evening, they have breakfast for you in the morning, you get up, eat, and then off you go to do your thing. Well, we availed ourselves of the brilliant front desk / concierge person again, and she told us that we could walk across the street and catch a bus to Anfield. Anfield is the home soccer stadium for one of the most storied and famous clubs in the world, also one of the most successful, Liverpool Football Club. Now, so as we went there, we walked around the stadium, took photographs of various statuary, and we thought about going into the trophy room, but it was £16 a tour, and we thought that was just a bit much, so we went to the gift shop instead. Lo and behold, I found a bargain. It's hanging up right behind me. Let me grab it. So I got this shirt, and this is a Liverpool football shirt from the 2005 UEFA Champions League. Now this will come into play later, but I bought it because I remembered watching that Champions League final on ESPN, and Liverpool won, very exciting match, and the shirt was on sale. What a deal. I like a bargain. So, anyway, we left from there. We read at the bus stop across the street from the stadium how we could get on a bus and ride down close to the city center, but we decided that we would go to the Walker Art Museum and the Circular Library, again, based on the recommendations from the brilliant lady at the hotel front desk. So we got on the bus and rode to St. George's and took a photograph of the Duke of Wellington, the hero of the Waterloo Battle and nemesis of Napoleon, then walked over to the Walker Art Gallery, which by the way is free, and we looked at some beautiful paintings by Rembrandt, Monet, Cezanne, Walker, Gainsborough, etc. Then we went across the way, almost next door, just over a little side street, to the Round Liverpool Library. Now this has a very famous room called the Acoustic Room, and so we decided to test it out. Emmett stood on one side of the room, and I stood on the other and whispered, and he could hear me distinctly. Also, we tried it out. We'd heard that you could turn pages on one side of the room and a person could hear on the other. Well, that's true. Maybe this is what gave rise to the rule that you should always whisper in the library. Beats me. Anyway, we left subsequently, and we were going to walk down to the Maritime Museum at the waterfront. But we decided it was going to be a bit of a walk, and we should cut through this park called St. John's Garden to shorten it. I'm so glad we did. As we walked into St. John's Park, we saw a cluster of tents and figured maybe there's an impromptu market. We said, well, let's go check it out. As we walked over to the tents, lo and behold, what they had actually was a gathering of people trying to promote children reading more at the library. It was some type of charitable thing, but they had on display the very silver trophy cup from the 2005 UEFA Champions League, where I just bought the shirt the day before, and I had the shirt on. So lo and behold, they let me hold the trophy and get some pictures with it. Check them out on Instagram and Facebook. It was unbelievable, uncanny actually. Give glory to God. What a great break. So about this time, the day was getting a little late, and we said, man, we're not walking all the way down to that Maritime Museum. And one of the ladies there suggested to us that we go to the Philharmonic Pub and the Ye Crack Pub, which were places that had been how shall I say, patronized by John Lennon. So we said, all right, we'll do so. So we went over to the Philharmonic, beautiful place. It's really a Victorian hotel with a lower story bar with beautiful finished wood, inlaid paneling. It is really ornate. So we enjoyed it rather well and then walked around the corner. But before we got to it, we had to detour through an area where we saw this church that looked to be in ruins. And we were surprised in the middle of the city, so we went up to read about it. It was St. Luke's Church, and it had been damaged in World War II by a German bomb, and it had never been rebuilt. It was preserved in its bombed out state, hence the name Bombed Out Church, which is its other moniker, as a war memorial. On the grounds of the church, they had a statue to the very famous event from World War I in 1914 Christmas time, where German troops and British troops spontaneously left their trenches and actually played soccer in no man's land. What a great story. They had a little market on the grounds of the church that day selling record albums, every shape, size, consideration that you could find of not just albums but also 78s and 45s. It was a walk down memory lane. We subsequently left there and went over to the Ye Crack pub, which was frequented by John Lennon and had red commemorative disc put out by famous Grouse Scots whiskey, speaking of how John Lennon would come there and congregate with others, and they'd debate issues of the day or maybe discuss issues of the day when he was in art school. So at one time they'd heard a lecture at the school, and a group of his friends and he founded a dissenting group, and that was thought to be his first, quote, band, although they never played a gig, and apparently some of them couldn't even play an instrument. But nonetheless, so be it. Well, later on, after raising a pint or so to the memory of John Lennon and the Beatles, we went on back to the hotel via the 10A bus, had a great dinner, and went to bed, and then woke up the next day feeling like we'd spent 2 good days in Liverpool. Well, that day we were flying out to carry on our trip, and we had decided to fly through to Isle of Man, then come back, hire a car, and head on to the church. Well, what awaited us at the airport? But it was called the John Lennon Airport, and it had a giant statue of a yellow submarine made by some of the dock workers. You'll have to check out the photos of that too. So that was my day in the life of Liverpool, really 2 days, but hey, I took some poetic license. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day. See you on the next journey. Bye-bye.